Well Rooted is brought to you by Gerard and Associates CPAs. With locations throughout Los Angeles, Gerard and Associates has been guiding entrepreneurs and creatives towards realizing their dreams for over 20 years. Discover how they can support your vision at gerardcpa.com. Hey, it's Haneen, and today on our first episode of Well Rooted, we are joined by Lana Salah. Lana is a stand-up comedian. She is an entrepreneur. She is a powerhouse. And on today's episode, we talk about her experience doing stand-up here in Los Angeles, how she's navigated the entertainment industry as a Palestinian American woman, her experience this past year specifically, including how even the student encampments have played a role in her getting back on the stage. All of this really made for a great conversation. Lana is brilliant. She gives so much incredible insight into what the experience of a Palestinian woman is in the comedy industry. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear today's episode. And this is Well Rooted. How would you describe your experience as a stand-up comedian over the course of this past year as a Palestinian?
I think it's been interesting since the tragedy of October 7th. There was a definite shift. I took a break for a little bit because the waters were very rough, and there was a lot of kind of acceptable anti-Palestinian sentiment going around at the time. So there were friends and family that were concerned for my safety and things like that were really palpable at the time. Like I almost didn't even like to leave my place a lot. So it kind of was a little for the first, I want to say, 3 to 6 months. And I would talk to other comedians who were still out there, and they would test the waters and be like, yeah, oh my, there's so many people out here just saying wild stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I could take it right now. I need to just take a break. And then I started kind of going back out again earlier this year, and I felt that some things have shifted. I feel that people are a little bit more aware and more they know more about the context and everything that happened before, and people have been able to form their own thoughts. And I've watched people I've known for years go from one end of the spectrum, somewhere to the middle. Like I've seen people shift over the course of this last year, and things that I kind of never thought, I would see, in my lifetime. So, and doing it in comedy, I think, it was always going to be a part of my comedy. It was always part of it from the very beginning, but it became a much more central focal point of it. Like, I want to talk about this. I want to say something about this because I have a lot to say about this. But it was always trying to find that delicate balance of how do you do this? How do you make it funny? How do you make it respectful to, really what it is we're trying to, we're not a joke, we're not the joke, but we're dark at this point. So this is all of our dark humor is coming out and coming in play. And I think it almost highlights that is one of our special talents as Palestinians. I've sure I've known people, I have some family, friends, people I've known over the years that were just so dark but funny. And you say where did we get this from? And then I look now and I'm like, oh, it's a response and a reaction to almost not being allowed to feel your pain and grief. And it's a response to that kind of denial that you're like, oh, well, we're just going to have to laugh about it, because why are we going to cry about this? We're here and we're proud to be here. So we're just going to we're going to be here, and we're going to let you know we're here, and we're going to show you that this is the way we live our lives, that this is who we are. Because a lot of people never met a Palestinian before.
Yep.
A lot of people that I might be the first person they've ever seen. And I always considered, even before all this, even before comedy, I always looked at myself as I'm an ambassador of my people. I'm not an elected ambassador. There's probably a lot of people to be like, you don't represent us. That's all fine.
Right.
But for the spaces that I get in, for the places that I'm in where I would be the only one there, I am an ambassador. for my
Hmm.
people. So I want that to be um, I want people to walk away from that with a positive experience and a positive understanding of like, oh, like not I don't want to say it like it's so simple to humanize ourselves because we've been so dehumanized that I think seeing a flesh and blood Palestinian talking about these things, bringing light of it, and trying to make some light of it because we know that's the only way you'll take it,
True.
and walking that line, I think has been like very challenging, but I do see uh, you know, shifts. So I hope, and like I said, I talk about other comedians and other people, and we that have been in the activism space for years, and we're like, it's changing, it's happening, like it's painful, but something, it's like we feel it, and so I think this is the time to be like, okay, we're just gonna be unapologetic about it. What's left?
Yeah.
Like
What's
what's
left?
left?
What is left at
Legitimately,
this
like
point?
like nothing. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of, how I think, and then, coming to like present day now where we're coming upon, 1 year of this current conflict, and just like still no end in sight, and widening conflicts.
Hmm.
And I think it's difficult. People I get a lot of people that are like, when you bring politics to comedy, when you bring politics to mics, and I go, it's funny though, because it's just my existence.
Right.
All I have to say is, I am Palestinian. Now it's political. I didn't, I didn't make a political joke, but now that already gets a response and a reaction. And there's not a lot of groups, ethnic groups, that that will have that similar experience in today's society in general. Like, there's pockets and places you can go which are going to be anti this and anti that, but just like in a normal, like, liberal town with all
Yeah.
kinds of people and melting pot, and you're just like, I'm Palestinian, people are like, and you're like, wow, is it 2024? Like, what
Yeah.
is
Seriously.
what is going
No,
on here? Didn't we
seriously.
just have BLM? Did we just not do all this? And now we're like confused. Like, what happened? And it's just like, that's it is a dehumanization.
Hmm.
It's almost also like a depersonalization, because they want, even when you want to bring it up, you have to somewhat depersonalize to be like effective about it. Because otherwise, you might get like really upset, or you might take it really to heart that, people are like, they just don't want you there.
Right.
And that can kind of, like, because it's just like, I am, and they're like, oh, we don't know if we like you. Okay, so anything after that doesn't matter. So
Right.
at that point, like, everybody's like, now it's political. And I'm like, so there's no choice, anyways. When your existence is political, even if you just show up and you say what you are, now your whole audience is now colored with that. And they're, viewing you through that lens, and whatever judgment or whatever comes with that. There's no way of escaping that.
That's true.
So, like that, and if how would they feel about the conflict, how they feel about Palestinians as a whole, how much they know about it. I had a show um, recently where somebody did get into my face and was very upset,
Oh,
and was, raising their voice in my face. And I was like, it was a man too, and I was like,
how dare
I'm
you?
gonna need you to back away from me, because, like, I don't care what your personal opinion is, but we still live in a society where you don't yell in a woman's face like that. But it gets like that heated for people. And so, it's that's what politics does to people.
Hmm.
And so that's where it's like, you're now walking that line all the time by just speaking on your people, on your cause.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's and I know people that do try to avoid it entirely in their comedy.
Hmm.
And I think because of that, because they don't want to necessarily deal with that kind of conflict, and also, they weren't maybe as connected, or maybe, and so it
Hmm.
wasn't that focal point for them. And I understand that, and it's just like, but it is for me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, like now it's like, I'm a Palestinian American comedian. There's,
And we need you up there.
yeah.
I mean, we
So,
need like no platform is too small or
no, and
too little.
people
Like,
platform you for, like, we always come back to, like, we're supposed to center the voices,
hmm
and whoever the voices may be. And so people would platform you also specifically because, we want to hear these voices. So I think, just like having more of them and creating them is all better, because all our perspectives are valid. But like specifically in this conflict, like, it's unusual because, it's like most people don't have an actual Palestinian to talk about it with. And so a lot of people are just going off online and speaking for Palestinians and doing all these things. And I'm like, are you okay? Like,
I mean, yeah, there are like white people doing Depka on TikTok.
yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
And I love that the culture, I love when I see, that's why I said it's like there's great things about it too,
hmm
because within all this, death and destruction, you see people that are like, wow, we didn't know about you guys, or we
Right.
didn't know. And so it's like that, like, I don't even know if you call it a silver lining, but like now people, they know, and they're more like aware of our culture, and they're more
Mhm.
aware of like our existence. And
Exactly.
that's important for us, just to be like, while they're trying to annihilate us, it's
Right.
like we're still here.
Exactly.
Present.
I mean, I
So
never thought we would see people with kofiyas and Palestinian flags in the
I just
streets.
did a show last night, and I was at UCLA, and I didn't know they had a protest, and all the streets were filled
Oh, wow.
with keffiyehs. And I was like, are they here from my show? Like, I didn't know. This is pretty cool. But then I was like, oh, there's a protest. And I was like, and I was there for the UCLA protest. And like, I wanted to go because, like, I've been out of college a long time, but I wanted to go because I just didn't believe it. I was like, are these
Are you
like
talking to or are
just
you
the
referring to the
student
encampment?
protests? Yeah, just
Okay.
like in general, just like the level of like how people, again, I've been in America most of my life, and we were part of the cause for all of my life from my childhood, and we never saw this level of, civic involvement,
hmm
civic recognition, students and banding together. And it was like, it really did something. It really made me, like, I started to choke up sometimes thinking about it,
Oh,
because I'm like,
yeah.
oh, like, this is amazing.
It
Like,
really
just to go
is.
see it, and to see, like,
Yeah.
it really did, like, it filled my heart. and
Yeah.
and it was something that I think, after that, those months and months of kind of being in sort of isolation and everything, and then you go out and you see, and you're like, wow, like, this is something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I'm like, wow, it's like these people are walking around like, look, I don't have a kafia, okay, and I don't mean it like that. Like, I lived in LA for a long
hmm
time. We just that never.
We aren't walking around with our kofiyas or our
No,
flags on the
no,
day to day.
no. Okay. And now I'm like seeing, like, Joe Smith walking around with a keffiyeh, and I'm like, am I not Palestinian
Yeah.
enough? Like,
Are they out
am
Palestinianing
I,
us?
should I be like, I swear I make good hummus. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going on here, but like, that's kind of what I'm like, online. Same thing. I see, I post a lot on threads, and I see a lot of people that are like really, in the mix, and talking about it, and really like educating themselves about it. And I'm like, wow, look at you guys, like, and that's why I love being American.
hmm
Like, I think that's the thing that it's like I always like to say, there's always so many things that are wrong and bad and whatever, all these things, but I love Americans for that. That's
hmm
such an American quality. And like, what other place would you go that you would have, like, it's starting to happen in other countries in Europe, but where you just have people that are like, they don't know Palestinians. They're not Palestinians, and they're out in the streets.
Yeah.
Like, it's something like, really, like, it's like when Mr. Rogers used to say, like, look for the helpers. Like, those were the people. I'm like, these are the helpers.
Yeah.
It's like, they're so like, it's funny, I say it, like, they're so cute.
They are so
Like, I don't know how to
cute.
say it, like,
They
they're
are
so
so
cute. I'm like,
cute.
look at you guys, you're so cute. So that's kind of And that gave me also fuel to get back on stage,
Okay.
because I think it was like, you know, there was seeing that, like, oh, there's people that are now like, and behind you, and then you go to certain stages and they're like, hey, you should go over that place because they're like really like, like pro there, and I think that kind of got the conversations going and stuff. So I really credit the student protests for that, and just in general, like seeing these kids go out, because I'm not from that generation. I'm Gen X. So I'm from the generation where like we did what we were told.
Hmm.
We, I mean, we protested, but we didn't, we were always like, we got to be in school. We weren't, so I was just like, wow, like this was something that I needed to be like, okay, then I shouldn't be, I should be out there. Like, I don't need to necessarily be in a camp on the streets, but like I should be, putting my voice out there. And I had people that were telling me like, your voice is needed. You need to come out. And they were asking me to do different shows, and I was like, finally, I was like, okay, let me just go. So I really appreciate, I don't, words won't express like how much watching the students really like inspired me. Because we get old and we get like, like, I don't know if like it's like,
I don't
and I'm
know if
like,
it's gonna
yeah, I'm
change. We've
like,
been trying for a long
it's exactly
time.
like that. It's
Yeah.
like, it's like my parents and my grandparents, and
Hmm.
and so it's like, we gotta get up, gotta go to the gym, gotta get like, it's like we get back. It's like, and I'm trying to find that, like they're giving me that wind and that energy. And it's just like in the audience, like when you go and you have the audience and the audience gives you back energy, it's similar. It's like when the people are giving you back the energy, you're like, okay, let's do this,
Yeah.
like, so yeah, I mean, the kafia really did it. Like that kafia like
That's what
became,
you needed to see.
that's it, because it's the best it's like it's the fastest way. I mean, the
Yeah.
flags and what, but just because people aren't necessarily all walking around with a flag, but the kafia was just like, oh, immediate,
Yeah.
like just immediate, like, oh, comfort.
It is. It is very comforting to see.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a healing quality for yourself being able to talk about it on stage.
Yes, definitely. For a long time, I didn't like I would be in situations or scenarios where it was like, maybe you shouldn't talk about that. Still
Mhm.
happens, still does. Like, I'll still in certain areas, they'll be like, maybe don't. And it's, for lack of a better term, like it's always like people that are, ignorant or have their own issues, that it's just like, but being able to kind of just be on stage and say it and talk about it is super liberating in a way. Like, it's scary, but it's very liberating, because it's just like there's nothing, like, it's weird because it should be such a normal thing to say, I am this,
Mhm.
but it's like you feel immediately naked, and you feel like you're like you're in that space of like, now we're all gonna judge me. And I think being able to like stand in that like space and say that enough times over and over, it's like when you like buried your last like fuck, like it's like,
No more fucks
it's like
given.
no more, because it can't get more, like, it's like we can all be online, we can all, but when you're like, when people say things, I'm like, come say it to my face, because
and
I'll get on stage and
and
I'll
I
say
and I
it.
think that's what's so honestly healthy about the fact that you get to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of us are online and we wish we could reach more people, or that we had a broader reach with our following, or that we could educate more. But you're there on stage, and when you're doing comedy, it's like this immediate return, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of instant gratification, and also instant, like, the opposite, like, like bombing. And I think that um dissecting that, like, first of all, as an artist, because we're all going to be like, we're all going to be critical, but also, trying to understand, like, did it, like, again, does it come from a place where is this, uh I'm just going to say, is this racism?
Mm-hmm.
is this coming from that, or is it coming from a place of like extreme discomfort and just uh it's it's something that maybe people don't want to associate with laughing in a comedy. I think like, and I think in the latter part, like I can understand that to some extent because like I said, our humor is dark because our experience has been um, rife with struggle.
Right.
So I can understand how some people who didn't exist in that type of struggle or any kind of struggle for that matter, it could just be like uncomfortable. Just like
Hmm.
death is very difficult for people and grief is very difficult for people. Um, but I think my life experience and my experiences with grief and struggle have put me kind of in a unique position to uh, like I can talk about it and I can also understand that um, when it is coming from a place of like they're not able to hold that space or carry that in a meaningful way. Like there are just people that are just like this is the level of my consciousness, my existence, anything beyond that, it's just too painful for my psyche and I just
Hmm.
can't, and again, there's arguments to be made about we should all expand ourselves and there's all these kind of arguments to be made, but ultimately, we're there to reach the people that are more open, more like receptive, more like in the sense of, again, they've never met a Palestinian before, but they've been hearing about, and now they can meld these two things together, and they can kind of create their own stories that
Yeah.
about Palestinians that aren't so depersonalized. And I think that again, like we are literally a dying breed. so
Hmm.
so it's like,
Literally.
that's kind of the idea of, especially during this time, it's like, meet a Palestinian and to get in those rooms and in those spaces where you can do that, it's a lot of work.
Hmm.
And so I think, and it's also, again, a lot of confronting that. It's like you have to write the comedy and then you have to get up and perform it. And then you have to confront the reality, the acceptance that half these people just aren't going to like you, just maybe off the bat, depending on
Yeah.
where you are. And then you also have to be, confronted with the reality of like, doesn't even matter because really, if it's a good joke, half the people will laugh and half the
Yeah.
people might be offended.
Yeah.
That's that's the thing about comedy is like some of the times it's some of the things I'll say, it's so shocking to people
Hmm.
because again, it's so dark for them. And they're like, like, I don't know if I should laugh at this.
So you have one specific set that I saw that I watched a few times because at first I was like, should I laugh at this? But then I couldn't help but laugh at it. But then I understood it better the more times I watched it. And it's where you kind of reference I'm Palestinian and I'm above ground with all
Yes.
of my parts intact. But
Yes.
I kind of love it because I love how you pushed people to be a little uncomfortable in that moment. And there were still people laughing.
Yeah. And I think that's another sign because I mean, I do. I don't know if you do, but we laugh when we're uncomfortable.
Hmm.
It's a psychological phenomenon. So I think being like able to say it like, you might be used to seeing us dead, but
Yeah.
and I
And you
and
can't help but laugh at that.
yeah, because it's you look at somebody like Bassem Youssef and you look at like we are, I mean, mentally a lot of us are in a dark place.
Yeah.
So this isn't just we're not up I'm not up there to say something to be shocking just for that. I'm trying to deal with my thoughts.
Right.
And if I'm seeing something and the first thing that comes into my head, it sounds so dark, but I'm laughing because I'm like, what else is there?
Right. This is how
To,
we go on.
yeah, like not only
Yeah.
that, but like, sometimes when things, it's like the theater of the absurd. Except unfortunately, this theater of the absurd is going to be responsible for the annihilation of our people. But the theater of the absurd is like this. This is unserious. This can't be serious. This is not like
Hmm.
this is bad theater. because
Yeah.
it is like that. You're watching this and you're like, people aren't eating this up. People aren't buying this, are they? But it is, because there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot, like, let's not get started about how much propaganda and brainwashing, and just how much, like, even when every time I post, just the bots that come out of the
Yeah.
woodworks and things. And like, when you look at like what people are up against, and that we're like, like, in terms of number of people, in terms of, investment that we're putting forth to like amplify our voices,
Hmm.
you know, I do, I've worked in like, marketing and advertising, and I know what this stuff costs. I know what's being invested in trying to get other messaging out there. So I think like being in that kind of position where we're like, okay, so we know what we're up against,
Hmm.
and we know that, you know, um, there's there's a lot of like, because I talk to people, and and when I, even just in normal conversations, especially over the last, like, the beginning 6 7 months, people be like, oh, you look so interesting, where are you from? And it happens a lot. And when I would answer and say I'm Palestinian, a lot of the responses were like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I I didn't." And also because I could assume at that point that they'd never met a Palestinian before.
Right.
And so all they were seeing, they said, I watch it on television. I see what's going on. I and when you see their reactions and their responses, just in normal conversations. So I have to assume that there's a subset of society also that as soon as you say, "Oh, I'm Palestinian," they're having the, "Oh my God." So when that joke was coming up, it was from that premise of like, I'm here above ground, like, oh yes, I know you're used to seeing, now you see a live one,
Yeah.
okay? Um, and I had another joke that I think was really like upsetting to people, that I was saying, which was, uh, I used to say that Palestinians are like Bigfoot, because even when you would get a picture of us, some people would still say we don't exist.
Wow.
But now I think we're more like rare Pokemon, because Israel's got to catch us all. And it's very shocking to people. Okay. But
Where's the lie?
that's all I think of.
Yeah.
I don't, only reason why I got the idea for the joke was I was at a mic one day and I saw a guy wearing a Pokemon shirt and it said, gotta catch them all. That was it, because that's how my mind works. So again, if that's the inner workings of my mind, and that's what I'm, and it's coming from a place again of like, I'm trying to spread awareness in the best way I can. In some ways, the dry way, because really, it's like the most serious way to say it. Like
Hmm.
if I go up there and I'm like, look at me, I'm alive,
Yeah.
it's insulting.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like we're not clowns here, but in the sense of like, I know as soon as I say I'm Palestinian, there's the people in the room that are like, oh, ooh, ooh,
A real
what,
one.
like,
Yeah.
and what is that? What's the next thing? What's she gonna say? What? Because again, there's so much buildup around it,
Yeah.
that the moment you meet a first one, the real one, there's emotion that's released. There's something that comes out of people, their faces, they're this, they're that. You can tell they've never been confronted with it real time live, and you're just like, wow, I never, like, and a lot of shows you can only see the first row of people. Sometimes it's like you don't get to see, between the lights and everything, sometimes you see everybody, and you're just like, you see all their faces and you're like, and then one person will just, it's delayed. A lot of people will be like, can I laugh?
Yeah.
Is it, so there's like this delay and there's this thing, but like, understand, like, my comedic influences were people like George Carlin, like Bill Hicks, like people that were doing important social commentary for the times, which are literally almost the same times. Meaning, like, if you watched something from Bill Hicks or George Carlin from the 80s, from the 90s, especially the 90s, talking about the Gulf War and stuff like that, you could literally replay it now and just change the locations, and it's the same.
Wow.
And it's like, it's amazing in, 30 years. And the difference is that I feel like people's attention span and people's intellect was more interested in these concepts and higher concepts at that time. I think people's attention span is much smaller now, and I think it's harder to take such a difficult topic and condense it down to sound bites, 30-second clips, 1-minute clips that can be go viral, that you can
Mm-hmm.
share. And that's where some of those jokes and some of those things come from, because what's a one-liner about Palestine that's not going to be, because I hear so many comedians making one-liners. I mean, they're not Palestinian, but they'll talk about the situation
Mm-hmm.
from a variety of angles and things, and because it's a hot topic.
Right.
So it's like, but as a Palestinian, my one-liners and the things that I say are much more loaded.
Yeah.
And so like I'm doing my best to walk that, line, and to walk that in the most, like, to honor my humor and also the cause. But like, I still get people that'll be like, you don't represent Palestine. And I get all kinds of people that are just, but like, again, in the spaces that I'm in and the stages that I'm on, I'm there to, let's just say, entertain. But in the terms of speaking about Palestine, I want the medicine to go down with the sugar. And
Yeah.
that's like the best. Like, again, I love America, and I'm American, so I
Mm-hmm.
understand.
Right.
I understand the culture. I
Yeah.
understand, how we communicate with each other, and that humor is, the best way, because people will, after shows, come up to me and they'll be like, that was like, and they will say things, and like, people, even like, I've had senior citizens walk up to me that I was like, you'd never think that, people that are like 70 years old, they'd be set in their thinking and their,
Right.
and and having them come up to me and saying things about like, oh, I loved when, like, I'm so sorry, like, just just the human aspect of, I think, like, there's always the bad things, but just those interactions, like, that fuels me. And that's also meaning that, like, hey, I did this show of 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, 10 people, 2 people, 4 people,
Mm-hmm.
okay, are going to go tomorrow and say, I saw this funny Palestinian woman,
Yep.
okay? And I think that's all, not all we have, but like, because the media, we don't, we, a lot of times we're not given that space.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't, like I said, we're being shown in a dehumanized, depersonalized manner, in the media, where our bodies are being shown, our grief, are without a true voice. And even though we are not there, like, we're here, I've been to Gaza, I've been to I've lived in the Middle East, and I've spent, a decade of my life, traveling through there. And so I have an understanding, and I have a connection. And I think, like, the best that, we can offer is that we're the ones that can get in those spaces, and we're the ones that have to, like somebody says, keep making them uncomfortable.
Exactly.
That's it's a terror. It's like, it's a comedy show, you're not supposed to be, but like, you really, good comedy can make you uncomfortable,
Yeah.
because the truth is funny but also uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the thing. And it's like, if you can, that's what the comedic mind does, is it sees these things, and you want to go up and say the truth, but again, that the truth is difficult for people to swallow, so you got to sweeten it up. And
Yeah.
you spend your whole time figuring out, how do I sweeten this up so that these people will see nice, attractive lady going up, hi, how are you, let me tell you about my dead people. Like, that's, you know you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you come in the package that the media has packaged for them, if you come in the package that, again, we're talking about, like, the way that we're typecast,
Mm-hmm.
like, if you come in that, like, again, even the kafia, like, I love the kafia, but like, I want to be, part of even the reactions I get, and part of the way the audience interacts is that they don't know. I go up there, they're getting their first judgment, and then I say, and then they're getting their next thing, and then they're moving on to the next thing. But I want I want them to see me as a person who happens to be Palestinian, and that's now we can have this shared experience
Right.
versus, oh, that person, she just, this Palestinian person just went up there and talked to us for 20 minutes. So I definitely feel like that, breaking certain mold barriers, making, giving a different vibe, face, a different background, like just in terms of like my corporate background, I have an engineering degree, like these types of things, it's like, hey, we're, Palestinians are the most educated.
Yep.
And when I tell people that we're the highest literacy, the highest education rate, like highly intelligent,
Specifically the population of Gaza too.
highest literacy
People are
rate.
always shocked to hear that.
Yeah, that they have like their education and literacy, like people, like that's the thing is like I really recognize that a lot of it comes from what they see, and because none of them are going there and none of them are meeting us.
Hmm.
So I want, when they meet me or when they see me, for them to walk away and go, they're like us. Not like, we're different, but like, not like Kendra, not like us. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
we all have a shared experience. And
Yeah.
really, Palestinians are no different than Americans in that we just want the right to live in peace, free of violence on our land.
Hmm.
Everybody has that. Like, we all can agree on that.
Right.
And I think how we go about it, how we talk about it, people can be upset about it, can argue about it, but we can all agree on that. And I think when you're doing this comedy and you have the opportunity to take people on this journey, and then at the end of this journey, they're going to make a decision about everything they heard. And they can either be like fully closed off to it and like, again, like, oh, because this person, like this, they said this, and like, we're the kafir, like they have so many triggers. They have so
Right.
many triggers. Okay. My goal is to be the least amount triggering in the
Hmm.
sense of, I don't want you to have a reaction until you hear what we're going to say and talk about. And then that'll be your real reaction.
Right.
And that's, like I said, the best way to see it and learn it as well, because now I'm like fully liberated seeing that. I'm like, oh wow, like now I can see them without even them placing any kind of, because I know how I look and I know what they're thinking when I
Hmm.
come out there. And then now they have to, their minds are doing
They're
somersaults.
like, wait, Palestinian women look like
Their
this?
minds are doing
Yeah,
somersaults.
it's not what
They're
they've
like,
been
and then
fed.
it's like you're Muslim, and then it's like all the different things. And it's like, yeah, because we are multifaceted people.
Right.
Like we are, like we invented open heart surgery, we invented
Literally.
math. Okay.
Literally.
like like I don't like I don't
Universities.
like I don't want to sit down and be at a TED talk. Okay.
Yeah,
Like, hey, let me
yeah.
open up the Wikipedia and tell you everything we did. And because people will be like, give us one thing that Palestinians brought.
Oh
Like,
my
listen,
goodness.
like people will be like that.
People
Like,
really say
what
that.
inventions or what did they come up with? And I'm just like, again, one of the things that I feel that as a Palestinian that I have is the ability to empathize with people of all kinds of struggles. Having your land taken away, coming from, my grandparents were survivors of the Nakba, uh, having all those stories passed down, being in that, there's a number one, it humbles you, obviously.
Hmm.
But number two, like, we, I would never ever catch myself talking at or getting in the way of another person group talking about their struggle, understanding what, knowing that this is, like all valid. And I think, again, like with Palestinians, I feel like there's, because it became such a political issue in our country, I feel like there's a lot of people that are like, well, the Palestinians should know better, and the Palestinians should, why they gonna do, if they better vote for Kamala because this,
Yeah.
and they get into these weird like, and I'm like, first of all, you're chronically online, touch grass. Okay. Please touch grass, because I like to think of the internet as an extension of, like, at least for me, and I think if other people treated it this way, the world would be a better place.
Hmm.
But I won't go say anything on the internet that I'm not going to say on the stage or in real life or to your face. I'm not going to do that because that's the way I lived before social media. Okay.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have walls to write stuff on. We were kids. Okay. We had
Right.
fights. And I don't condone violence or anything like that, but I do believe that again, it's like that depersonalization that'll it makes people a little cuckoo,
Hmm.
and it creates these kind of parasocial relationships, or they create, like, they've all created a parasocial relationship with Palestinians without knowing a single Palestinian, and they've all decided that they care more about us than we do because we're not doing what they think. And I think that's a very unique, like, I don't think I've, like, seen that happen in a minute. Like, I mean, I'm sure America's history, we've done a lot of terrible things like that.
Right.
But just to be like, again, we're 2024 and you're on the internet talking about, you know what I think the Palestinians should do? Like,
Yeah.
replace
Yeah.
that with any group and it wouldn't be okay.
It's not okay.
It's just not. And so, and social, the platforms, they're not good with, like, they don't protect, when we get hate stuff, when we, like, like, some of the comments I get are obvious hate speech,
Hmm.
but I'm just like, I already know that it's not. Meanwhile, I'll get a strike for, like, repeating something Kamala said. And I'm like, she said it on TV, but, like, that's, like, they're on us.
Hmm.
And so it's back to that idea, like, we have to be held to this higher standard. We have to hold ourselves to this higher standard. And you hear black people talk about all the time, and they say, like, we have to be twice as we have to be twice as good. We have to be twice as, and I think there's a component of that, like, you have to be twice as peaceful,
Yeah.
twice, like, because then it's like, well, you're a terrorist. And I think, like, and that was why I didn't want to deal with acting, because, like, literally when I was trying to do that and I had my agent, like, that was all the weird random roles they would send me on. And I was
Oh, like
like, I mean, I
really
get
like
it. Like,
stereotypical,
it was like,
Muslim or
wife of
Arab.
suicide bomber.
Oh,
And I'm
right.
like, I literally was supposed to go read for something. And I'm like, who is me? Like, I remember reading the script even. It was like a short, and I'm like,
And you're like, how are these scripts getting greenlit in the
who are
first
these
place?
people making these
Yeah.
things? I am so baffled when I see stuff like that. But again, like, even if you look at the popular stuff like Homeland, like Foda, these types of shows, these were all Israeli, you
Hmm.
know, shows, like, all of the representation of us, majority of it has come from Israelis or stuff. And it's
From
like,
the ones trying to like
yeah. And so it's like,
punish us.
I get it. And I get why, there would be a concerted effort to not platform us, because, again, any effort to humanize us would go against a lot of that labor and money that they've been spending,
Right.
to make sure that everybody sees us all as Hamas, you know.
Mhm.
But and that's the other thing, is, like, I'm very purposeful in my comedy, that I speak about Israel
Mhm.
and I comment about Israel. This is about Israel and Israelis. Um, you know, I do see people making it like a Jewish thing.
Mhm.
I like, I disagree with that, and I purposely really don't want to get into any of that, because obviously for obvious reasons, but more than that, I don't see Jews as a monolith.
Yeah.
I don't I don't see that, we should make this like, I judge people based on the content of their character. And, like, but I also have experience with Israelis, and I've been there and I've traveled through
Mhm.
there, and it is apartheid.
Yeah.
So that's my lived experience with them. Just like I travel a lot to other countries, and there are countries that I'm like, I don't really like to travel through there. Like,
Mhm.
they're really rude at the airport, or they're real, things like that we
Yeah.
all identify with, but even more so, when you travel through, Israel. And and I'm an American,
Yep.
so it really like it it's I'm glad that I went there, and I'm glad that I traveled through there and spent time there, and I'm glad I went to Gaza. I was even My family got stuck at the checkpoint at Gaza for 6 hours because my dad got nervous and drove the car over the spikes the wrong way,
Oh
and
no.
it was like really bad. And what was even crazier was they were taking me there because I was supposed to like meet a guy they wanted me to get married to. So I,
Only Arab parents.
I'm like, why
Like, we are
I got
waiting at
like
this
they're shipping
checkpoint
me
for
into
six
Gaza,
hours. Your Addis is over there.
but like when you really thought about it, and I thought about it even then, and it was heavy on my heart then. And imagine being 19 and that it's heavy on your heart that they're taking you to Gaza for like an arranged marriage because they can't leave Gaza.
Mm,
And I was gonna say no because I didn't want to go through with arranged marriage, just in
mhm.
general. And I was just like, and to be like, but that means they can never get out. And that was like a thing in my 19-year-old brain,
Yeah.
like leaving there, sitting at the checkpoint for 6 hours.
It's not normal 19-year-old
Like, I'm like,
thoughts.
oh, so this guy is just going to be in Gaza for the rest of his life? Like, I don't even know what happened to him. Okay. Like, that's the level
Yeah.
of like, so because of that, I feel like I can say the things I want to say about it. Just like I can say, they pulled me out at a checkpoint and they did. I can also say that because I lived in LA a long time. I've had a lot of first person experiences with Israeli people.
Mhm.
Um, in a, as a Palestinian and as a suspected Palestinian, okay?
Mhm.
Like, and I just like, it's funny because everybody wants to say we're terrorists, but like the most aggressive, the
Yeah.
most like, even in a comedy show, even in a situation when you look at the audience, I feel like I can even identify in the audience because like they're in my opinion, I feel that they're because they're Israel, like, they're so far gone in their like brainwashing that they're experiencing such a huge cognitive dissonance now. Like they don't ever have to deal with anything being against them.
Yeah.
Like it's like a weird,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and so
They're never
they
challenged.
yeah, like it's like all of a sudden they're challenged and they
Hmm.
react in these, which is crazy, but also just like exposes like how crazy. So it's like stuff like that, like, yeah, I'm aware of and I will talk about it like that because I do think like I have a joke about like Israelis on dating apps trying to match with me, you know, and stuff where it's like, it's gonna happen.
Have you ever accidentally gone out on a date with an Israeli?
No, actually,
Okay.
no, no. When I was in the West Bank in Israel when I went there, and I think I was 17 at that time. And I didn't know that, like, I was in a mall in Jerusalem and I met this guy who was speaking Arabic.
Hmm.
And I didn't know, like, because it was my first time and I was like, that they, speak Arabic, they look like us. Like,
Yeah.
so, so I remember, like, I was talking with the guy and this, and then after a little bit, I'm like, I think this guy is Israeli. Like, and he knew I was, Palestinian.
Yeah.
So I also, that's the other reason why I didn't think that it could have been because I'm like, why would you? Like I just,
Yeah.
so that was the only time. And not even to get into specifics, that was so scary because he was like, oh, I want to meet your dad. I'm like, no, sir. Like we are done now. But that was the only time. And the only thing that like does, it's like in terms of dating, like I guess it is kind of like I have, it probably would be kind of hard to date somebody who's Jewish without really knowing, like especially if you're just like on an app or something. You know what I mean? It's like you
Right.
don't know people's background or beliefs and stuff. So I never really like I have a lot of friends, that are Jewish, and I have friends that I like for years I didn't even know they were Jewish just because, they're more secular and things like
Hmm.
that. But in terms of like, dating, I never really it's just like I always knew that there would fundamentally be a problem at some point.
Right.
Like I just felt that. So I just was like, no, no, no need, like just, it would be, um, like
Like,
families specifically. Like
right.
even if like you get along, it's like, most religion, family, all that stuff is always very complicated, but I think more so, in that. And so yeah, no, I just kind of like avoid it. I
Mhm.
just think it's just like easier. And it's not like, it's not one of those things that it hasn't like it's, again, it's much easier on a dating app
Mhm.
because it's like people say, what they are. Um, I've definitely been in situations where in person, like, again, I was in LA a long time where like I've gone on dates with, guys who were Jewish and things. And then ultimately we would arrive at that kind of like, oh, like I've had guys that'll be like, I'm okay that you're Palestinian. I'm like, yeah, like
Uh,
I'm
just
good.
the way you said
Yeah,
that
I'm
was.
so good. Bye. So like, and that's again, I do think that's a part of what like colors my reality about it because I've had these lived experiences and I've seen how people, how and again, I'm just going to call it like racism, how it comes into play, at what point it comes into play, and how people don't see it as that.
Hmm.
Like they really don't,
Yeah.
and it's just like, but it is, like it's like they're, because if, especially because like again, I don't hide who I am and what I am. I think when they're like, again, saying things like, oh, I don't mind if you're Palestinian, it's like that's pure supremacy. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
like do you not see that?
Right.
And nothing like enrages me like supremacist mentality. Like that's just
Hmm.
super enraging to me because you must be like low intelligence. um just there's so many things that go into having that
Or like
worldview.
lack like worldly
Yeah,
awareness.
it's like there's so many things that I just
Yeah.
like, and a lot of the people, they have money, they have a lot of things, but it just like, it's just an immediate like bleh, ick.
Hmm.
Like it's just an immediate like, I just, you know and it is surprising there's a lot of people like that, like, especially now
Yeah.
you see it like more so, and I see it a lot when I watch like the videos of like the ones you see online, and like with the people protesting and how people pop up, I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
like I'm like, was this what you've always been like?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so I feel like it is kind of validating.
Hmm.
I don't want it to be, but there's moments that I'm like, okay, now I know why when I was going through Israel and like you guys were acting like that. Like that was real.
Yeah.
Okay? Like people talk about it and we're gonna, oh, maybe that was just your experience. No, you guys
No.
really don't like us at all.
Yeah.
And they really don't see us as human. So
Hmm.
it gives me immediate discomfort.
Yeah.
As it should.
Yeah, no, they definitely don't see us as human. I mean, we've only gone once, and that one trip, I had two babies at the time, and I had two guns pointed at me and
Yeah.
my babies, and we were in the backseat of a car. So we're not viewed as human in that
No.
society at all. It's totally fine to say that and
Yeah.
acceptable.
I mean, that what more than what's happening now?
What more? Yeah,
Yeah.
what
So
more
it's like
proof do we need?
I don't feel, and for that's why I go back to like, I don't feel like I need to cut corners or mince words when I talk
No,
about that specifically.
right.
Like I get a lot of hate from people that are pro Israel online about that. Listen, with my dying breath, okay, if Israel has no haters, I am dead. Okay?
Yeah, yeah,
Like that's like, just because, there isn't, I just there's nothing redeeming about it to me.
yeah,
There isn't, in terms of where it's gotten as a society and what it's doing,
right.
with its military and its money. So
Absolutely.
that kind of thing. But like that's why like a lot of, my jokes come from, specifically that. And people want to say like, and some people talk about Zionists and some people say you shouldn't say even anything against Zionism is anti-Semitic, or all these things. Okay. while all that is like up for whatever, and I've had other comedians that have been like, well, that's just saying you're anti-Zionist, just a dog whistle for saying you don't like Jews. And I'm like, I want to have a real discussion about this, because how did that, like, I've always considered this intellectually, like the Zionist movement is like, well, all Jews are Zionists. I said, but there are Christian Zionists.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm coming to the space with like, and I've had these conversations because I really I don't want to come across that way, because I'm not that way.
Right.
But I want to understand, like, how can I speak? And I actually said this. I'm like, who should I say killed my family? Which group of people? Is it the boogeyman? Is it the ghost? Because I just, when I go on stage, what do I say?
Right.
And they just kind of stop and they don't know like what. And I go, so basically at this point, we're just like not allowed to talk, or we're just fully policing speech. Okay. To the point where I'm just like, oh, he who shall not be named. This, and it's like, you're unserious.
Yeah.
Because you can't just take away all speech. And then when I ask you, okay, so what about this? Who did this? Oh, well, you can say it's Israeli Jews. And I'm like, okay, but like a lot of you guys here are fully with it too. So and then there's the Christians that are fully supporting it, and they're not Israeli or Jewish, So I don't know where we're like I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to say Israel is a bitch. Okay. That's
in short.
Yeah. That's like, I don't have a lot of time, but that's where I'm at. And so I think there is a line that we all have to draw, whether it's in comedy, whether it's in our speech. There is a line that we each personally have to be like, this is where I'm comfortable speaking, existing, expressing myself in. And I will say this with my chest, and I'm going to say it online, and I'm going to say it on stage. Yeah. And that's, again, back to how I believe people should conduct themselves. But obviously we've learned that there's a lot of people on the internet that are either not real people or living out there like they're not real people. Okay. Like, because as a real person, we would have to go out and speak. And, I work from home, and I do, we go out. It's like, we're all through the pandemic. We've all been isolated, but we all came back. And so it's like, we all know that we can do this, but the way that this has become, or the favorite battle cry of go to Gaza. Like,
why? So you can.
What do you mean?
Yeah. What do you get out of that?
What is that like? Like this idea that this is all the discourse that we can have. Like, if we say something, we're not happy with this, or we're not happy with the genocide.
Like they all
of our
received
people.
like the same email of like talking points.
For sure. And I think it is like that.
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
it is.
Literally what it is.
A lot of it is I think people really don't understand enough. We talk about it a little bit, but if people understood how much money, how much concerted effort, organization, how many organizations were involved in creating all of this discourse content, confusion, doubt, like all this things that they're doing, because it's like to the TikTok ban. Nobody wanted to accept that the TikTok ban happened or came out because of Palestine. Oh no, it's because the Chinese have done it. No, listen, they never passed a law so fast. Okay. They went and said, hey, there's too much pro-Palestine. You guys are promoting pro-Palestine stuff. And as an engineer, I understand that algorithms are agnostic. Okay. That's how they work. So the idea that we were like, no, TikTok, you're pushing this pro-Palestine content. We know how the algorithm, now that's changed since then, meaning because of that intervention, because of that, now the algorithms have changed. Now the censorship, now all that took place because of the last year. Yeah. We've had social media for how long? We had the election, we had, Cambridge Analytica, the Russian bots, we had all that. That was like election interference. How is this not foreign interference?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing, is like, if people understood the level of organized foreign interference that is going on, a lot of it funded by our tax dollars, but even not even charities, nonprofits,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that are spending money to make hate stuff,
Yeah.
okay, against Palestinians. Like there was a whole thing in Wired magazine about the Israeli government was doing a whole campaign on Google ads against UNRWA,
A
like
charity organization.
buying up UNRWA terms
Yeah.
to basically promote a website that was saying how UNRWA is terrorism, just all this craziness. And it's like, this is technological, psychological warfare. And it's like, listen, Bill Hicks used to say, a war is between two armies,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Not one army and a bunch of guys in flip flops,
Literally.
okay? Like, we've seen this movie before in Iraq,
Mm-hmm.
okay? 1 million Iraqis are dead, okay? It was 87 Americans died, 150,000 Iraqis in the first, like, in their, like, that's what they, like, and yet, they still dropped more bombs on Gaza than they dropped in all those wars.
It's insane.
So the scale and putting it in that perspective, and I think that's why I love I love that I have a STEM degree, and I love that I went through that, because again, I feel like now I'm in that position that it's like, you want to talk, let's go on a logical journey. Let's go through let's go through it mathematically. Let's go through it by the numbers, because numbers don't lie, people do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like a lot of what goes on is the way they do it is they want to obfuscate all the numbers, and they obfuscate it by drawing doubt on where everything's coming from, where the numbers are coming from. And when you have more organizations, reputable organizations, and people that are doing these, studies and doing these things saying, hey, it's more like 200,000 dead. It's more like, when you have other people, which is what needed to happen, because they basically just say everything the Palestinians say lies. They're
Mm-hmm.
not dead. They're just faking it. They're making up names.
Yeah.
It's like,
Hollywood.
it's like, it's like we spent 75 years planning so that this could happen in Gaza.
Right.
Do you understand the mental gymnastics that people need to do to believe that? That's the scary part. Is like, you're sitting in front of us, looking at us, talking to us, and you see we're normal people. We have families like normal people. And you would rather believe that we plotted for 75 years. Like, we've just been going, you know what? In 2023, we're going to do some shit they're all going to remember us by. That's what they'd rather believe.
Yeah.
The insanity.
Than just what's right in front of them.
That's why I'm saying, like, it's such a cognitive dissonance that even a person of moderate intelligence would kind of be like, hmm. So I think we're at that stage now where you get the moderate intelligence people and the high end are like, hmm. So if people haven't by this point,
Mm-hmm.
it's only the other alternative. It's not like
Yeah.
you're really like digging your heels in at this point. So now it's just racism,
Mm-hmm.
supremacy, whatever these things that people want to call it. Cause like, I don't like to, I've never been running around talking about like racism. And so not that it doesn't, it wasn't like, a thing in terms of my lived experience
Mm-hmm.
because when are you going out saying I'm Palestinian? Generally, like, it's not, but now again, you just get up and say it. You wear the keffiyeh. People that aren't Palestinian are getting hate crimed for wearing the keffiyeh,
Yeah.
like, because they think it could be a Palestinian.
Right.
Just the implication of the
Yeah.
fact that just wearing the thing now,
Like
you could get
the
hate crimed.
Jewish protester. He
Yeah.
was a pro-Palestinian protester,
Yeah.
and he got shot
Yeah. And there is
by
a
a
lot of that.
Zionist.
And there is a lot of that by a
Yeah.
Christian Zionist too, which is crazy. Again, that's how you know that there's other things at play. And I think, comedy is designed, or it's supposed to be, to like cut through that, to give, because once you're platformed, you get to say your
Mm-hmm.
time. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it's, unless you're going to talk about, the R word and things, like, there are things, but in terms of this, like, they know when they put you up there, like, okay. So I think, being able to get that response, film it, get like, that's really what I think is going to be, it is enlightening for people, because that's like everything. It's like a social experiment. It is a social
It is,
experiment,
yeah,
right? Because
definitely.
they don't know what they're coming to see. A lot of them don't know the comedians before. They're not looking up
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I'm going to go see this. Like right now at this stage, people aren't going to say, I'm going to go see Lana Salah. But like in the sense of like now that they're there and they're in position, now they're having that immediate like social experiments happening. And I think it's I mean, like it's very rewarding, but it's also like I said, there's times where I'm just like, should I kill myself? Like, I don't mean it like that, but like the way, because all comedians will talk about this. All comedians will talk about, what it feels like to bomb, what it feels like I can't even say bombing anymore. Okay. like I, and it's like all of us will talk about that. But like I said, it hits different when you bomb on a Palestinian joke. There's something, again, because we're critiquing it. We're like, oh, is this because they don't like Palestinians, or is it because?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of, like, how do you say? I've had to, I don't want to say shield myself in that way, but like, again, it's a psyche thing. It's like, I'm not going to get too caught up in the fact that, there's a number of people who don't believe in our right to exist.
Right.
Okay. I'm not gonna like let that just, kind of deter me
Yeah.
because there's too much at stake.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like I said, there's people that we already know they're not going to change. The hope and the goal is, and it's already happening, like the majority of America is against what we're doing there, how
Yeah.
we're handling the conflict. So it's already at that tipping point. So I think like we're just here to like help push it along. So the other people
For
can keep
sure.
doing what they're doing and we'll just keep doing what we're doing. But yeah, it is a huge social experiment.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Well Rooted. If you enjoyed today's episode and felt it brought you value, please subscribe, leave a comment, give us a like, and a review. This episode of Well Rooted has been brought to you by Girard & Associates CPAs. With locations across all of Los Angeles, Girard & Associates has been helping entrepreneurs and creatives make their dreams come true for over 2 decades. Go to girardcpa.com to learn more. This is Haneen, and we are all well rooted.